Hey, what's going on, guys? This is JD Moonin. I'm coming at you guys with the third episode of the Redneck Philosopher, basically the relaunch 2024. The last episode, we kicked off the first episode of the mini series that we're doing in this mega series of the podcast, this full year series of 2024, the Redneck Philosopher podcasts. And the mini series is called the BPD experience. In the last episode, kind of briefly went over some of the traumatic experiences I've had with relationship throughout my life, and what it was like, emotionally for me, starting from, my teenage years, up and through, this most recent relationship I had. And I briefly went over, the beginning of our relationship. Now I'm going to pretty much dedicate this entire episode here to the beginning of my last relationship with Amanda, this woman who I want to make sure I put this in there. I want everybody to understand I still do love this person. I still do love her very, very much. I can't say for sure yet if I would ever not take her back. A part of me wants to say never again. The other part of me wants to go, well, I made a commitment. And I'm going to go over that today in this episode, kind of what I mean by, commitment. And I also want to want to touch base on, abandonment in this episode. That's really what we're going to talk about today. In what it looks like in a BPD situation. So I want to go ahead and just remind everybody that if you like this podcast, if you like the conversation we're having, if you know anybody that's BPD or bipolar, or any other mental illness, or anybody else who's has relationship issues that are very similar to the ones that I'm talking about in this podcast, any of that stuff, please, share this with them. The whole idea behind this podcast and the work that I'm doing right now is to help all of those who suffer from any of these ailments, who, have a partner that suffers from any of this, maybe a brother or a sister or a friend even, or just an acquaintance, somebody who suffers from any of this stuff that I'm talking about here, One of the things I've always done in my life is I try and help people to keep their relationships if I can. I've helped some very close friends of mine save, a marriage, in one case. There are other, types of relationship, and whatever that might look for other people. We used to joke around and some people would call me Cupid, and it was always just because, I've always found that if you can get through whatever problems that your relationship may have, now, whatever that is, and everybody's relationships are different, but if you can get through whatever those problems are that you're having in your relationship, by all means do it. Because if you have to keep in mind every problem overcome in a relationship will only make that relationship stronger. There is no getting weaker as time goes on. There is getting weaker if you just take those problems and you brush them under the rug, or you just ignore them or act like they didn't happen, or whatever the case may be. Now that, of course, that will make a relationship weaker. If one person is constantly just being steamrolled, then yes, that will make a relationship weaker. Because what it is one person's very weak in that relationship and doesn't stand up for themselves. which, arguably at some points in my most recent relationship, I found myself doing that. So anyways, I want to remind everybody too, if you haven't already, go ahead and like and subscribe. If you like the content, please, once again, share it with anybody who you think might be able to get some help out of this, because that's what the goal of this is. I want to remind everybody, I do not want your pity. Not asking for pity. I'm not looking for pity. I'm not looking for recognition. I'm not looking for, any of that. I'm not looking for riches. I'm not looking to get rich off of this. And of course, I would love to do this as my living, which I'm going to move in that direction, and I will do this for a living. I will be, back to being the influencer that I was at one time, and that's what I'm going to do for a living. I know I promised you guys that there'll be videos soon. I'm waiting on some money to come in. As soon as that comes in, I'm going to be getting the audio equipment and all that we need, that we had in the past. So I made the grave error of selling that stuff, trying to support, myself and Amanda, over the last 2 years. So anyways, let's go ahead and let's dive in. Before I go into a little bit more about, my relationship, I wanted to just say, I watch a lot of tarot readings and stuff like that, and I read tarot myself, and I'm very spiritual. I've got like an altar in my room, and I burn incense and candles, and I do offerings and all that good stuff, and I believe in God in the way I do, and however you want to believe in Him, if you do, it's your business. But I just feel like I was called to tell, just tell people that, if you're defensive about something your partner's telling you, put down the guard. I often don't think that enough people say that. A lot of times, listen to what your partner has to say. I think your partner's probably just telling you that they're not telling you something to hurt your feelings. They're telling you what they're trying to say, because whatever is being done or said, or whatever the case may be, it might be hurting their feelings. And they're just trying to let you know that. The other thing I was being called to say was, if you need help, reach out. I don't know who that's for. I don't know if they're connected to me or if they're not. Just know that whoever you're thinking about asking or talking to or reaching out to, that person loves you. Reach out to them. I think that you might find that they might be a lot more understanding than you might think. Talk about your problems. Open up. That's the faith. That's the leap of faith. It's like when Alan Watts, he said one time, he goes, there is this idea in love. There's this idea of the fall. And he said, we don't call it rising into love. He said, no, we call it falling into love. And that's because it's sacrifice. Essentially, just like Odin did. Whenever Odin went and got the runes for the Viking faith, he sacrificed himself to himself. Much in the same way, when you're in love, you sacrifice yourself to the one you love. Now, I don't know who that's for, but I just, I was listening to a reading, and someone just called me to just say that. So, anyways, I want to start back where we left off. I believe yesterday or on the last episode, we were talking about, right around the time where we moved in with my grandmother. And I just want to reiterate, and I just want everybody to understand that when it comes to Amanda, I still love that woman. Okay? Nothing I'm saying here is to damage her character. None of this is to make her look bad. Okay, we're all people. We all have problems. We all have our own issues. We all have our own things that we go through. And I do want to say this, for the first time in my life, I know what it is to love somebody unconditionally. I gotten into it with somebody on Quora one time, and they were saying that, oh, that's codependency. No, it's not. Unconditional love is something a parent has for their child. Do we call that codependency? No. We call it love. We call it a parental love. But I conclude that a parental love is the same thing as when a husband loves a wife. A husband or a wife will lay their life down for the other. No matter what the other person does, that person will love them and stick by them. No matter if they're sick or if they're healthy. That is unconditional love. Unconditional love is something that I think in most cases are forgotten. And I wonder if maybe that's because most people don't even know what love is. They've never felt it. Or maybe we get so distracted with the distractions of this world that we forget how to love. I don't know. But one of the things I've come to realize in my stance along the years is that love is everything. We require it as a species. You put us in solitude with no one else around for extended periods of time and we go crazy. I feel like love is a necessary addiction in many ways. I think that might be one of the best ways to put it. The high that you get from love is insane, and the lows you get from love are unbearable. The pain would rival that of being shot, I think. But now, with all that said, the passion that I had experienced with Amanda was unlike anything I'd ever remembered. I had a passion with my ex-wife, yes, and I was too young to understand passion when I was with Kate, really. When you're that age, you just can't understand passion. You just know you have these feelings for somebody and you just don't know what they are. But as you get older, you start to understand chemistry and passion and conversation and what it is to have a best friend, a person that you want to talk to them about everything and anything. And I've felt that a couple of times over the years. I've had a lot of friends in my life, who have been my best friends, people I'd talk to about anything. But with Amanda, it was different. I could talk to her about literally anything. I wasn't ashamed to talk to her about anything. Tell her about what I had experienced. And for the first time in my life, I had told somebody about me being sexually assaulted at 16 years old. Amanda was the first soul I ever breathed a word of that to. And I would say in many senses that Amanda was the first that I talked to about a lot of things, including some of the damages that my ex-wife had done to me. I'm okay with talking about it now. When I talk to Amanda about it, I finally realized that it's okay to talk about it. That it's not my fault. It's nothing to be ashamed of. One time my ex-wife had tied me to the bed and she had beat me with a belt on the stomach. Damn near ripped our headboard off, grabbed her arm, and I thought I was going to break it. She hurt me so bad. These things, they made me very standoffish to sex as I grew older. That's not to say I had a problem with sex. No, it was just I didn't open up to anybody sexually after my ex-wife. And Amanda was the first person I had. And that was just because one thing I knew about myself was that the more sex I had, the more feelings I would gain for someone. And a passion or a fire or just this emotional connection and mental connection that I had with somebody would just grow with the more sexual intimacy that was involved. And so I often avoided that when it came to relationships, not avoiding sex per se, but I'm talking about avoiding making love to somebody. There's a difference between having sex and making love. It's a completely different connection. And I don't care if you look at sex as completely physical or not. We all know that there is some kind of supernatural thing about sex. That it connects you to somebody when you love them on a level that is just unexplainable. You can't explain it. And I don't think any of us really know why. I don't know if it's the intertwining of the human body with another or what. I don't know what it is, and I don't think any of us really do. All that I know is that there is something there that is divine, if you will. So anyways, back onto the story here. I pretty much realized that Amanda was going to be losing the apartment, and as devastating as it was, and you know, I remember when I had lost my first apartment. Not my first, but I'd lost one of the many apartments I'd had. It was the first apartment I'd had by myself. It's just me. I had a friend of mine who let come and live on my couch, and he was on my couch for behind my couch for 8 months. And that was fine. We had brokered a deal where he was gonna get the food, and I took care of everything else, and he had gotten into some legal trouble with the DWI, and him and his parents weren't really getting along well. And so he just asked me if he could, if he come stay with me. I said, yeah. So anyways, I was getting ready to start my business, and I told him, I was like, hey man, can you catch 1 month of rent for me? I'm going to be, I've got enough to get this equipment. I really want to get it. I need to get this business jump started. I've got this really good idea, and I can't wait for another month. Would you mind, catching this last month? And he told me, he goes, oh, I can't do it. And this decision that he made, it really did affect our friendship in the long run, and ultimately my trust in him waned because of this. So he told me he couldn't do it, and the next thing I know, him and that girl had gotten their own place. And so instead of helping me, the friend who had helped him for 8 months with 1 month of rent, he decided to go and take that money and get his own place with this girl. And that really, really upset me on a couple different levels. But that's okay. And so knowing that experience, I recognized how Amanda felt when we were moving her stuff out of her apartment. I recognized how hard it was. You made it. This was your own place, your own little area to stake your claim. Your flag flew there, and only yours, and nobody could take that from you. And I understand how powerful that feeling is. And to have it taken away, in a sense, or to lose that is very difficult. And, I recognized that as we moved in over here, and that really did have a really, really bad strain on our relationship. And I think in some ways, that she thought or felt like it was me that had taken that away, and I did not. No, I was trying to save her from an eviction and all of that. I was trying to save that from happening, so she didn't have to go through the same bullshit I did. And so instead, I tried to give her the opportunity to live here and take whatever money she was getting from her work and just pay off that, whatever the settlement was going to be with them, so that way she didn't get, an eviction on her record, and instead it was just an early cancellation, essentially. Now she never did do that, and that was news to me, because there was a time period that I thought that's where that money was going, and I was told that that's where the money was going, and then I come to find out later on in the relationship, about a year or two later, that she actually never paid it, and she still owed that money. And I'm not upset about it. I mean, I recognize when somebody has a problem. Gambling was kind of an issue at the time, and I didn't realize that. I didn't know this was a big problem. I knew she did, but my first experience of gambling, I went to. Now keep in mind, guys, I'm not arrogant, or I'm not self-centered. What I do is I just always judge a situation based on my own experience. Experience is the biggest teacher, and so what I do is my memory is really good. I have almost a photographic memory. In some cases, I can smell the scent in the air from a memory. It's kind of crazy. And so what I'm getting at with this is that what I had done was I had really thought, about my experience with gambling. And I remember I walked into a casino, and when we were burying my grandfather in 2018, I went to Orchard Park, New York, and went to one of the Seneca casinos, and I remember I walked in with $250, and I mean, in a matter of like an hour, I was gone. I lost, and I was like, just looked at my mom. I was like, well, fuck this, I'm never doing this again. Little did I know I would actually be a very successful gambler. I would be a very lucky gambler, really. Successful gambler is kind of not a term I want to use currently. Because when I did start using gambling as an outlet for my pain, or just a way to kind of escape, then gambling also had become a problem for me at that time. But so basically what I'm getting at is through my own experience and the way that I had felt, I understood, Amanda's anger and her feelings. However, when I get blamed for something, I will defend myself. And that's what I found myself doing a lot when we moved in over here, was defending myself from things that I was just like, couldn't understand why I was being blamed for them. I didn't understand it. And it took me a long time to finally realize just how, something that I've always found very easy, which is looking at myself in the mirror and going, wow, dude, what are you doing? I've done that throughout my entire life. I started doing that as a teenager. And, because I know what it's like to wake up and wonder where your next meal's coming from. I know what it's like to wake up on a park bench by a police officer. I know how these things feel. I've been there. I know what it's like to literally take $1.05 to go buy a bean burrito from Taco Bell, and I hadn't eaten in 2 days. I know what those feelings are like, and so I've always self-reflected, because I know where I've been at in my life before, and I know where I'm not willing to go back to. That's why I've had addictions in the past, and they haven't become a problem again. And that's just because I know where those addictions had led me, and I don't allow them to take me back. I don't allow anything to take me back. I know where I've been. I know where I don't want to be. And I know where I want to be. And so that being said, I whenever somebody's experiencing something, I'll come up and I'll give them advice, and oftentimes it's unrequited or something like that. I believe is the correct term. And it'll often upset somebody, and they'll think that I'm a know-it-all, or I'm sitting on a high horse. And no, it's got nothing to do with that. I don't think I'm better than anybody. Never have. Matter of fact, I know I'm not better than anybody. Are you kidding me? I know me, dude. I know me. I am. I come with a long list of problems. Who am I to think that I'm better than somebody? No, what I think when I go up to somebody is I look at them, and when they're telling me something they're going through in life, and I give them an experience of something similar, and I try and do that to connect, and then say, hey, I think there might be a better way. A way that's less hurtful, a way that's got less challenges. And I do that not because I feel like I know more than you or I'm better than you. No. I do that because I feel like if you hear my experience and the pain and the anguish I had went through, maybe you don't want to go through that. Maybe you want to go through a different way. It's my job as a healer. Okay, I believe I'm here to help people heal. I believe it's my job as a healer to not only help heal people, but to also help you to prevent reasons to be healed. I mean, we do that with our own medicine today. When we go to the doctor, we have preventative medicine. And that's the best way to keep, it's often better to get the preventative services done. It's a lot cheaper. But it's a lot less detrimental to our health to go ahead and nip the problem before it happens than to treat the problem after it has happened already. Now, if law of life worked that way, then prohibition would work, right? So we know in some cases it doesn't really work. But so, I oftentimes would see Amanda looking at me with this disgust, this anger, as though I was arrogant to her or that I thought that I was better than her. No, I never did. But I did also understand that there was an age difference. And people might go, 3 years. 3 years is a lot, especially when you're looking at somebody who's 28 and I'm 30, 31. That's a big difference. The difference between 29 and 30 is vast. It's a huge difference. It's the difference of being on one side of the Grand Canyon or the other. The mental difference, the mentality, the maturity level from your 20s to your 30s is significant. And I tried to express that in many ways, but oftentimes I believe it was taken as arrogance or whatever the case may be. And this was a constant theme throughout our relationship. And I could never really figure out how to deal with that. I couldn't. One of the things I dealt with Amanda the most was defensiveness. She was always defensive against anything I said. And one of the things that I think that, some people find very challenging, and they'll often accuse me of gaslighting, and I'm not actually gaslighting. I didn't even know what gaslighting was, but it's a type of abuse, by the way, for those of you guys who don't know what gaslighting is. Gaslighting is a form of abuse. It's doing something and then looking at somebody and going, oh, no, that's not what I was doing. No. But you also have to understand, too, that your perception can make you think somebody's gaslighting. I've had the same perception. I've thought Amanda was gaslighting me many times once I understood what it was. But then I also realized the failure of the idea of gaslighting. That idea is more of a defense than anything, and really what it is it's narcissistic in its main right, to be honest, and it's the best way to avoid self-accountability. Gaslighting, accusing someone of gaslighting, is from what I have found is one of the single best ways to avoid self-accountability. And so that's why I don't like the term. I don't even like the idea of gaslighting, because our perception oftentimes is the lie itself. I found this out through my own perceptions. Because when we're looking at something or we're listening to somebody, it's automatically being received with a bias. And that bias is our perception. It took me going through philosophy in college to understand how to remove these biases. Most people don't know how to do that. They'll tell you they do, but they don't. And I struggle with it. And really, it was Amanda, my relationship with Amanda, that made me realize that one of the biggest biases that I had was what I said, even if it hurt somebody, it didn't matter. They could choose to listen to me or not. And that's a really bullheaded way of looking at things, even though, I understand we have our right to freedom of speech. But it's just like if you go, over to the, like let's say if you walk into a bar and there's primarily black people and you drop the N-word, you have the legal right to do that. Does it mean you're not going to get your ass kicked? No. You probably will. So what we say does offend people. It does affect people on multiple levels. And my relationship with Amanda really showed me that I needed to watch out what I said. I needed to understand that my words do have power over other people and their feelings and their emotions and what they think. And so I think that it would behoove everyone to be more conscientious of that. And it was Amanda that showed me this. Amanda benefited my life in many ways. Now, when we moved in over here, things were going okay for a while. And don't get me wrong, it was wonderful for a hot minute. It really was. We put a fire in the fireplace, and I remember her little girl would go and sit with my grandmother. She really, really liked my grandmother. She took a big liking to my grandma. And, we'd sit there and we'd put funny little sweaters on the dog to make her walk funny, because it was cute. And the little girl loved it. We roasted marshmallows over the fire and stuff like that. And those memories are just something I'll never forget. Or when we played the doctor game, the little board game that when you touch the tweezers to the side, it shocks or whatever, And those things are wonderful. I've got some really good memories. We gotten chickens, But we stayed here and I didn't understand that my promise to Amanda was not being fulfilled because I had said, we're going to stay there, we're going to save up money, we're going to get our own place. Well, my grandmother had gotten sick, and so things changed. And I guess I didn't really discuss that with her because I didn't really know that at the time. I was just kind of living in the moment, and my future plans had kind of been put on the back burner. I was kind of just in, duty mode. What has to be done? Because when I grew up, that's how I was raised. My dad was a business owner, and I've watched them try and sell their business for many times, and whenever, one time they tried to sell it and the guy started screwing them, and my parents say you do what you got to do. And it was no longer just me. When it's just me, I don't mind. I can be broke for a time. I'm okay with that. I'm a patient man. I know that my opportunity will come. I just have to wait for it. I know that. But it's different whenever I'm with somebody, especially when there's a little girl involved. I didn't have the luxury of doing what I normally would do, which was wait for my opportunity. No, instead, this time I had to create one, even if it wasn't the right one for me. I had to create one because I had mouths to feed, other than my own. And so that's what I did. And so I was just working full time, taking care of my grandmother. And then at one point I was having to take things from her. I was having to take her financial stuff away. I was having to take her car keys away. And that was perhaps one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life. And I don't think Amanda truly understood the gravity of that situation and and the damage that it was doing to my psyche. I'm a very, very powerfully minded person. I have a lot of control over my mind. Through all of the things I've been through in my life, I've been able to really, really, really gain a sense of mental stability and control. I mean, up into the point to where I wasn't medicated for bipolar, and I hadn't had a bipolar episode in 4 years. And I was diagnosed with bipolar 1 rapid cycle, meaning that I could have, really, really heavy swings throughout the day. And before I had met Amanda, I did many times. Well, that mental stability that I'd spent 7 years honing and gaining control of, it started to wane. It was the structure from the job. I was working a job I hated, though I was great at it. I was the best agent on the floor. I was the best agent they had. The first week I hit the floor, I was running laps around their vetted agents, and I was immediately seen by the managers, by leadership, and I was already being looked at first me. But so, and Amanda was so overwhelmed with her own emotions and her own feelings, and I remember she had gotten very depressed. And I didn't really know what to do because when somebody's depressed, there's nothing you can do. They have to get over this depression. And this depression was just so much. And at times I thought she hated me. But there was other times that I didn't understand this disorder that she has. I didn't understand BPD and this self-loathing, this hate for herself, which was so immeasurable. It scared me. It really did. I didn't understand what she saw that was so bad about herself, because I didn't see it. I didn't see it at all. I thought she was amazing. She was the love of my life. I wanted to marry this woman. I wanted her to be the mother of my children, if I could ever have kids. And what I saw in her, she couldn't see it in herself. I remember her telling me how much she hated herself at times, or how she didn't deserve me, or I was like, what? What? That's for me to decide, not you. I get to decide who deserves me, not you. And if I say you deserve me, then you deserve me, goddammit. That's how I felt. And so I didn't understand. And this strife came out. This strife just happened, and I just didn't understand where it was coming from. And it all stemmed, I believe, from the apartment. In her mind, she thought it was me that took that from her. No, I didn't take that from her. I was trying to save her. And I mean, how do you tell somebody that when and not look arrogant, not look like I feel like I'm better than them? No. I just have this ability to look ahead and see what's coming. And that's something that most people with BPD really, really struggle with, is being able to look and see what's coming down the road. No, instead they live off of their emotions, and most everything is impulse driven, much like when somebody gets into a manic episode with bipolar and they become a sociopath, and the impulses are insane. And so then we went through these issues, and during that time I went through this mental struggle, and I was able to really kind of hold myself together for an extended period of time, but eventually this chipped away at this mental stability that I had. I mean, it's just slowly but surely, just tink, 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 like somebody who, like a sculptor chipping away at a marble block. And I've watched her leave me more times than I can count on both hands and both feet, probably. In that first and second year of our relationship, where it was about the second year primarily of our relationship. I watched her pack her stuff up, mad as hell, go throw it in her car and leave, and then come back that same night, and I helped her pull all of her stuff out of her car and bring it back inside. And I've done that more times than I can count, and given the opportunity, I'd do it again. Because I loved that woman, and I made her a promise in her apartment. One day I looked at her dead in her face when she told me she had BPD. And I was thinking to myself, well, I got bipolar. Yeah, I have herpes. And these things were okay to this woman. She was willing to work through those things with me. Who would I be to duck and run for cover if I didn't go through and muscle through this BPD with her. Did I know the extent of what BPD does? No, I had no idea. But I am that man that will go and read that book. Not so I can tell you you're mentally ill and you need help. No. I'll tell you I'll support you to get help, and I really hope you do. And I'll be there with you the whole friggin' way. That I'll do. That I'll tell you. Because I will. But I didn't understand about the pedestal. I didn't understand that when we first got together, I was somebody who could do no wrong. And then, I'm a human, and I do make a mistake. And eventually I did. Now, what mistake that was that set this off, I don't know. But then comes what they call the devaluation stage. Okay, so BPD is a cycle. The way it works is you have the pedestal cycle. You have the coming together of two people, the honeymoon stage, if you will. Okay, is what most of us know it as. But for somebody with BPD, you have the honeymoon stage, then you have this devaluation stage, and then you have essentially your painted black stage. Then you have the devaluation stage. They're saying stuff about you behind your back and telling people unbelievable things. Now, if Amanda did any of this, I don't know. I wasn't there. I wasn't a fly on the wall. I'll say that I do believe that she probably did, because the way some people acted towards me, one of the things I had to realize is that what BPD does is they'll create a picture in their mind and they believe it. Real or not. But to them, it's very real. And to them, you did those things, even if you didn't. It's a defensive mechanism that we all have. It's a primal defensive mechanism. Sets in before the age of 2. It's a toddler defense mechanism. And so if you want to know why your partner has BPD, look at her or his parents. That's why. Because that parent abandoned that child when they needed him the most. Not once, not twice, but as a punishment. And that's disgusting. That a parent would use abandonment as a punishment. That is abuse. I've arguably said that spoiling your child is just as bad as abusing your child. It just manifests itself in different ways. But abuse is abuse. One way some families will abuse their children is they don't know how to apologize, and so they buy them gifts. We see this a lot in American society. That, in my opinion, I believe creates narcissism. This inability to see your shortcomings and the inability to apologize. BPD is very specific, and it's very different than narcissism. Because BPD feels as though they're not good enough for anyone. They feel as though they themselves are low and scum. And it's sad. Because oftentimes they're not. When you meet these people, they're often some of the most caring and empathetic people in the world. They can be. But they can also be some of the most evil and vindictive people alive. And I found this out myself. That's okay. I hold none of it against her. I'm not mad at her. No. She couldn't help it. And that's what a lot of people need to understand. People have problems. And you can hate somebody. And if you do hate somebody for their problems, you might as well hate it. Just like Marcus Aurelius says, you might as well hate that fig tree for excreting juice. But so, back to the story, I it seemed like it was every other week. We got into a fight, and I never got physical with Amanda, at any time during this time period. She had gotten physical with me multiple times. And the most I had done was pushed her out of my office or the bathroom one time. But it wasn't healthy, and there was an issue, and I didn't know what it was. And Amanda she needed time to get away. She needed to think and be alone, and me with my abandonment issues and my own problems, when that would happen, I would think she was leaving me. And so there was this constant struggle with this, her leaving, I was, she's going to be cheating. She's going to, that's my own insecurities. And those are mine, yes, to deal with. But they're also, to some degree, my partner's things to consider. Much like I had to consider her BPD and the effects of the abuse in which she had experienced as a child and how they affected her and ultimately our relationship. Well, the women I had been with, the untrustworthy women I had been with in my life, those had to be considered and what their effect was on my psyche and ultimately our relationship as well, and they were not. That was one of the biggest problems I had with our relationship, is that it almost seemed at a certain point, at the beginning, my emotions and everything that I felt, they were considered. But then, when we'd start to come through, it was about a year cycle or so, 9 months or so, 6 months. We were on this cycle, this together, fight, break up, get back together, fight, break up. It would go great for like 3 or 4 months, and then, and then fighting would start again, and it would exacerbate, and then she'd move out or whatever. And so then I kind of got privy to this cycle, and I started to realize this, and I started doing some reverse psychology, and it worked for a time. But man, that defense mechanism, I tell you, it's not a better one. Okay, there's not a better one. BPD is adaptable, man. Yes, and the illusions that their mind can create are powerful, and they can turn any situation into them being the victim, even if they are the attacker. One of the things I told Amanda in our relationship, I told her, I said, I am reactive. I do not start things, I react to them. And so you'll get a nasty reaction out of me. And often that was taken as, when she was trying to tell me I was doing something, she would take that as me being defensive when I would question it. And that's just the philosopher that I am. That's me just questioning why she feels this way, not because I'm trying to gaslight her, because I'm trying to understand, because I don't see a problem with my action. And so I'm trying to question her and ask her why it's a problem, how it's affecting her, what I'm doing exactly, so that way I can see what I'm doing that's hurting her. Because I personally can't see it. I don't see the problem. I don't understand the problem. So I'm trying to understand. That's why I'm asking you. That's why I'm questioning you. I'm not questioning you to argue. I'm questioning you and I'm giving you a rebuttal, not for an argument, not to debate it. It is so I can understand your perception. Because when I can understand your perception, then I can then implement that into my perception. And I always wanted to do that for her, because I remember there was this quote that I read a long time ago, and it was really stunning. And I forget who it is. I believe it's on my Facebook. But the quote goes like this. It says, "Love is the unsettling feeling of realizing that another exists outside of yourself." And what that statement means is that instead of seeing someone as someone else, you see them as you. That is realizing that you are that person too. That person is you. That person says I just in the same way you do. And you love that person in the same way that you love yourself. That was so powerful to me because I understood at that time what it was to truly love somebody. And it was this relationship that showed me that. And you can call that a trauma bond or whatever you want to call that. I think a trauma bond is just another way of talking about the type of love that comes with someone with BPD, because someone with BPD is very much childlike emotionally and oftentimes financially in many cases. And so you take on the role of a guardian of sorts. And so your primal instinct is to protect them as though they're your child and your lover. And it's this very weird and unique form of love that you don't feel with anyone else. And that is what I think we often mistake as the trauma bond, or what we call the trauma bond, is that type of love. And that is a very unique type of love, because in a healthy, loving situation, the level of need is different. Okay? The level of need is needing that person's company around you. It's different than needing that person to survive, than needing that person for stability. Okay? There's a difference in those things. And so arguably you could say that the trauma bond is another person needing someone else. I guess you could say that is some form of codependency, if we want to believe that that term really exists. And I don't really think it does. I think that other people need other things from other people. What I mean by this is I think that everyone is unique in their own way. Okay, and it was not odd throughout history for a woman to live off of a man, and I don't mean like a leech. I mean that they have their job and the man has their job. The man was the breadwinner and brought the money home, and the woman was the homemaker. She kept the house clean, she cooked, got the kids ready, helped the kids with their schoolwork, and took care of the things at home. And that was very understandable in our past. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that every situation back then was good. And I'm not saying that I don't believe women should have rights. I absolutely believe they should. And I'm not saying that women can't work. I'm not saying that either. Matter of fact, I've got a good friend of mine that he's Mr. Mom, and she's the breadwinner. There's nothing wrong with that. Absolutely not. Those two roles are not gender specific. However, one thing that we do know is that in most cases, it is a lot easier for the man to win more bread. And that's because a man is naturally built as a workhorse, and a woman has things that she can do on the family unit that a man does not have the capability to do. And that is a level of nurturing and care that a man just innately does not possess. I often argue that that's because of testosterone and estrogen. But so I'm going over these things so you guys can understand the struggle that we had in that second year, in that first year. And I remember I went through an enormous amount of personal growth after our first breakup. She had left and I didn't know where she was. I couldn't even get a hold of her. She wasn't hardly answering any of my calls. My text messages weren't being responded to. And naturally, I flipped out because I had abandonment problems. I got, some of the things that you guys don't know about me. When I was 13 years old, let me rephrase this. Let me go back a little bit further. When I was in grade school, my stepfather, his brother was killed when he was 13 years old by a jammed gun. Okay, one of the brothers stood on one side of the table and the other brother stood on the other side of the table, and they pulled the trigger. Well, the gun was jammed, and so it wasn't supposed to fire, but this time it did. And so he killed his younger brother, Robert, at the age of 13. Now, that kind of traumatic incident, not only having that happen, but being there to witness it would be extremely traumatic. My stepfather went through that, and I could only imagine what it must have felt like, and the pain, and how traumatic it still is to this day in his 60s. And I don't even think he was a teenager at this time. So my good friend and I just gotten BB guns, and we were out in the cut out there in the field, and we were shooting at each other with them. Again, of course, we were told not to do that, so that was already an ass whooping right there. Okay, now how bad that ass whooping was going to be, I did not know. I didn't understand. It was really bad whenever my friend took that BB gun that was pumped to max, and he pointed it at my sister's chest. I didn't even know about this. No, because I went back to the house, I had a BB lodged in my arm. I had my mom dig it out of my arm with a knife. But I got a spanking so bad that day. I had a black and blue mark across my ass for I don't even know how long. I couldn't even sit down in class. I remember when my teacher had asked me to sit down, and I couldn't. I told her, I said, I can't. And she said, why not? She said, I just told her, I said, I just can't. It hurts. Well, they'd sent me to the nurse, and the nurse had pulled down my pants, and they saw that bruise. And they called CPS. My dad got mad at me as though it was my fault, and here I am, the child. I didn't even ask to go to the nurse. I was sent to the nurse. And because of his actions, I couldn't sit down in class. Now I don't hold this against him at all. He apologized to me when I was in my mid-20s. He gave me a heartfelt and meaningful apology, and I've forgiven that man. I love him dearly. My stepfather, I spent my whole life trying to be like him. One of the things that is real crazy about that is that I was a very troubled child. I had a biological father who didn't want me, and so I had my family had sent me off to Masonic Home School of Texas, and out there was some really bad experiences that had happened. There were some girls that had gotten raped by the house parents, and we had known about it. There were rituals that happened off in the field in the distance. You could see them sometimes at night. They'd have a fire going out there and some weird shit going on. None of us, you knew not to venture out that far, because if you did, let's just say sometimes some of those people, we never really saw them again. And while I was there at that school, I got into a couple of fights. One guy had hit me in the back of the head with a chair because he said something about my mom, and I just told him he's a bitch or some shit like that. And I got in a fight with this kid. Well, he knocked me out with a chair. And there they didn't have it. I said, no, we all lived there. We lived on the campus, and we were all troubled kids. That's why we were there. Well, let's just say that he ate a textbook at the back of the head, and his forehead hit his desk pretty damn hard. I knocked him cold out with that book. That was the last time that dude ever laid a hand on me or even attempted to hit me with anything. But, it's traumatic enough being left there, but then all the other stuff that was going on out there, that was a whole nother issue in and of itself. And so that was traumatic. My stepdad, when his parents were dying, he drank a lot. And again, this is not to talk down on my stepdad at all. I love this man, and I have the utmost respect for him. Okay? And I understand that people make mistakes. But so, he didn't have a soft hand with me. I was very much punished for no reason sometimes. And the straw that broke the camel's back, and why I ran away at 15 was because he had held me up by my throat up against my closet wall, or my closet door, and was slapping me in the face with the girls slapping him and screaming. I left that night, and I hadn't went back. And so you can say that I dealt with a lot of abandonment in my life, and it created this unhealthy connection to people. I just didn't lose people no matter how much they were using me or whatever the case may be. And so I found it very difficult to get rid of people. I would find a good in them, even if they were a horrible person. And I would just allow them to take whatever and take and take and take. And so, and in relationship, that would manifest as something completely different. It was this anxiety attack, this panic attack when my partner would leave. It's almost as like my life was over when they left. I mean, the panic that would ensue was beyond comprehension. I don't even know, unless you have this same problem, I don't know if you could even fathom what it feels like. And it's a different kind of abandonment. It's not like whenever you lose somebody to death. You know, at least there's a certain sense of closure that comes with that. Now this is different because that person's choosing to leave. And so on top of being the end of your life, that's the feeling you're having, then you have these feelings of self-loathing because why does this person not want you anymore? What's wrong with you? Is what would go through my mind. And my biological father never being there. My biological father, telling me he's going to be there and never showing up. Or Kay Castillo just being ripped out of my hands. Or being handed an eviction notice and a divorce decree in my front yard. And so every time Amanda left, that's what I felt. Those are the things that I felt every time. And eventually, I was real good at covering them up until I was going through so much mental strain. I had so much on my plate with my grandmother, my family not really being there to help me. And Amanda leaving me every time I turned around, that eventually my mental stability started to wane. And I'll never forget, there was this one event where Amanda went out to the car, loaded all of her stuff up, and I told her, well, if you're going to go, then go. And I'd go to walk off, and she would start screaming for me. Don't leave me! And I wasn't leaving her. I was just going back inside. And then if I would come back out, she would just be vicious and hateful and mean. And this is what they did. This is this push-pull thing. And I didn't understand how crazy it was. I didn't understand. It was driving me mad. I remember one time, this was, long after our first breakup. She had gotten the apartment out in Georgetown, and she screamed at me to leave. I said, okay. I said, all right. I grab my stuff, and I'm walking down the stairs. And she comes and she stands at the top of the stairs, and she goes, if you walk out in that garage, you're leaving. I'm seeing that as you leave me forever, and we're done. We're done for good. Never coming back. And I was like, whoa. What the fuck kind of a situation is this? You're telling me to leave, or you're going to, I'm afraid you might call the cops. I've got, I'm on bond. I'm going to go to jail. Okay. And then if I leave, that's the end of us. I didn't know what the hell to do. So I said, I'm going to sit in the garage. And this happened many times. It's this push-pull. It's this effect. And there was one time where I finally saw the pattern, and I figured out how to break it. And she was at my house. She had all of her stuff packed, and she had it all by the door. I told her, I said, baby, I don't want you to leave, But if you leave, I'm not going to stop you. I'm not going to chase you. I'm done with that. I said, but I want you to know I love you. I'm not asking you to leave. And I hope that you don't. And I went back in my office and I started reading tarot, and I was just sitting there. And I remember she come in there and she's like, kind of threw a fit, and she's like, I remember she just looks at me, she goes, tell me to leave right now. Tell me to leave. And I said, no, I'm not going to tell you to leave. I don't want you to leave. I love you. And I don't know what you're mad about, but I love you. And because I would not fight, because I would not continue that cycle, she broke down and imploded herself. She sat there, with her back up against the dresser, and she sat there on the floor and she just sobbed. And I just grabbed her and I hugged her and I kissed her on the cheek, and I just told her how much I loved her. Because I do. And I made a promise to her that I would fight through this with her. This experience. And again, I hope that by sharing this with people, you will see people with BPD in a different light. If you're going to be with somebody with this disorder, you have to be understanding and empathetic. And it's hard for me to do even to this day. And sometimes, God, I want to just walk away. Arguably, maybe I have. This last time I left, and I wasn't leaving the actual relationship, I was just trying to get her to come to the compromising table. Now, I know that I didn't really give a straight story in this one, but I hope I wasn't misleading in this podcast or anything like that, and I hope you were able to keep I hope I was on a straight thought and you guys could understand and keep up with it. It's a lot to unpack what I've been through with her. And like I said before, given the opportunity, I would do it again. She was put in my life for a reason. Now, I don't know if that's to be together forever or not. I don't know if we're meant to be or not. I don't know if she was a karmic lesson for me in my life, in my journey. I don't know. But what I do know is that her disorder gave me the ability to control my own, to stop a psychosis in its tracks, and we'll discuss that in a later podcast. The psychoses that I went through on our second split. It gave me an empathy on a level of which I have never had before. And most of all, and this is why I say, if you want to have the hardest lesson in life, pray for patience. I promise you that when God gives you that lesson, it's going to be one of the hardest lessons of your life. And that I learned, and my lesson in patience was Amanda. Some of us are a little bit harder than others to learn. Specifically, I remember one time I was reading tarot and I heard in my mind, when I was like, no, I choose her. I remember that thing in my mind just goes, you always got to have the hard road, right? Yeah, that's right, I do. Because I believe that nothing in life that's good for you, nothing good in life comes easy. It seems like it does later on. No. That's because I have the know-how now to make it easy. That's because I went through the not easy part. That's why you pay a master mechanic the big bucks and you don't pay an apprentice the big bucks. Because a master mechanic, you're paying them for their knowledge. A job that's going to take them 2 hours and takes them 30 minutes, but you're still going to pay them for 2 hours worth of labor. That's why they're a master mechanic. Anyways, so I guess that's kind of the message I have today, and we're going to continue on with this series, the BPD experience. on episode 4. I just want to say thank you guys for listening. And if you like this content or you know anybody that this content might help, please don't forget to like and subscribe and share it with any of those that might benefit from hearing what I have to say. I want you guys to keep in mind, I'm not looking for pity. I'm not asking for advice. I'm not even here to debate. What I'm here to do is bestow unto you the experience in which I have had in hopes that you can use that in your journey. Or if you just need to know somebody else has experienced it too, well, I'm here to let you know that I have. And that you'll make it through it. And whether it's with the person you want to be with or not, you're going to be okay. I'm here to let you know that. I'm here to let you all know that I love you. And you're loved. And you're never alone. Even when you think you are never alone. All you got to do is sit down and tap in. And you'll find out that you yourself is all you need. Because you're connected to the great consciousness that we all know is God. That's all I got for you today. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And we'll see you guys on the next episode of the Redneck Philosopher. Have a good one.